Kravitz. If you have not followed his Triple H horse racing podcast, you're missing out. It's one of the best podcasts in the country.
Hey, what's happening, everybody? Welcome to episode 1 of the Early Bird Special with Pete and Paul. Never mind. Sorry, that was a mistake. Actually, episode 236 of the HHH Racing Podcast. I'm your host, Pete Visco, filling in for our founder and uncle and whatever else you want to call him. Cheapo is what we like to use here on the podcast. Filling in for Howard since he is actually in Vegas. Ready to compete in the NHC. So hopefully he's not at, right now, maybe not spending money, drinking too much at a strip club or something. Take it down a notch, Howard. You got to rest up. But tonight, we're just going to have myself and Paul the way it's supposed to be. But first, let's jump in. We're going to say tonight, we're going to cover a couple things. We're actually going to cover the late pick 5 at Tampa, which includes the Tampa Bay Derby and the return of the podcast favorite, Tap It Trice, especially for Paul and Howard with their future bets. And once we cover that, we're going to cover our pick 5s like we normally do, but don't leave us then, because right after that, we're going to have Jim Miller from Hawthorne Racecourse come on. And we're going to talk about some goings on at Hawthorne, whatever Jim's been up to. And then we're actually going to do a quick coverage of the late pick 3 on Sunday at Hawthorne. So definitely stick around all the way to the end. You won't want to miss that. So real quick, let's get into a couple of our housekeeping items. As you can see on the bottom of the screen, follow us on YouTube. Obviously, you're watching now. If you're watching now and you're not a subscriber, please subscribe. We want to get that subscriber number up. This way, YouTube knows that this is a show that the viewers enjoy. And hopefully we can make piles of money, and then we can hit some bigger pick 5s than we're actually hitting now. But definitely subscribe, hit that like button for every show that you watch. That's a fantastic help to us as well. And then hit that notification bell. The notification bell just alerts you every time there's a new podcast, especially if there's an ad hoc one or something that's a little bit off schedule. For all you audio listeners, podcast listeners, please subscribe, rate, review on whatever platform you use, Spotify, Apple Podcast, Anchor, wherever you get your podcasts. Also, follow the HHH Racing Podcast feed on Twitter, @HKravitz. That's Howard's personal Twitter feed and the show's Twitter feed. And also Paul and myself and any of us on the show, if you want to follow us, our Twitter handles are in our, quick little bio. Also, HHHRacingPodcast.com, our website. Go on there. There's things like photos, and there's also, more importantly, there's just a lot of information about us and the podcast as a whole, sample podcasts. And more importantly, as we segue in, there's the Power Picks. Power Picks, $15.99 a month, basically $4 a week, $2 a card. We cover 2 cards a week. Go on to Patreon. You subscribe there, and you could become a weekly subscriber, so you'll eventually you'll get it every Saturday morning, generally for that Saturday's cards. And if you, like I said, in the bottom of the video player is the link to Patreon. But also, if you go to our website, like I mentioned last week, if you go to the website, there's actual examples of the Power Picks. And what that'll help you do, at least, you'll get a feel for the kind of information we include, and it'll help you decide if you want to subscribe. I don't see how you wouldn't want to, but just in general, you can go there. You can look at past ones. You could see some of the types of horses we give out, ABC grids, this and that. So definitely do that. Go on the website, check it out. I think you'll really be happy with it in the end, as some of our viewers and listeners can attest to. So without further ado, and actually the one thing we always talk about here is our upcoming shows for next week. Obviously, Bettin and Boozin and the HHH podcast will be on as normal on Wednesday and Thursday. I don't have any of the details yet since Howard's in Vegas. Kyle's actually in Vegas. So we haven't nailed down the tracks that we're going to do, whether there'll be guests or any of that. So keep an eye out. And obviously on Twitter, we'll let everyone know at what point once we nail down the tracks, we'll obviously let everyone know. So without further ado, let's bring in my co-host, who I haven't seen in a couple of weeks because last week we switched shows. So from the Saratoga Special, Massachusetts, ready to gamble, Paul Halloran. Paul, what's up, my friend?
T-minus 11 hours and 54 minutes, Pete.
Oh, you're ready. You're ready, huh? I mean, so if people don't know what we're talking about, Massachusetts, as of, you said 10 a.m., Paul, tomorrow?
10 a.m. tomorrow, online sports betting is legal.
That is a fantastic. I remember the day Maryland did it last year, and it was a banner day. I'm not sure the wallet appreciates it, or the bank account, or even the wife, but I enjoy having the sports betting going on. So I haven't talked to you in a couple of weeks. Anything new and exciting going on over there? I see how you feel about it be just me and you on the early bird special instead of Howard on the HHA.
Yes, so you see my tagline. We're missing Wally Pipp.
I mean, we tried this before. He always seems to worm his way back. And by the way, real quick, while you're on, I actually have something. Let's see if this comes up as it's supposed to. I have a little picture that Howard wanted us to share. So let me bring it up. This is for everyone on screen. So this is the NHC room. So this, I think it'll fill up in a couple of days, and this will be where as you can see, there's a bunch of my cursors there. It's a little blending in, but you see all the TVs. Looks like a great setup, Paul.
It looks a lot like the room I've been in at Mohegan Sun on Breeders' Cup Day many times, Pete.
Oh, okay.
I've been spent several Breeders' Cups at Mohegan, and that type of setup. Actually, it's more table. A cafeteria table type seating, but it certainly looks like the type of room you and I would like to be in.
I mean, I'll take it. I think we have to start working our way towards, but yeah, let's see. We don't know where Howard's going to be. Hopefully he's at one of these tables celebrating at some point. But yeah, we need to start working and getting ourselves to next year's at some point. Before
I got to get back. I am stuck on 29 for Las Vegas trips.
Oh, is it 29?
And I haven't been since COVID, and not all because of COVID. Obviously, COVID wiped out 2020, and then 2021 it was still kind of residual. And I'm involved in the high school basketball tournament here in Massachusetts, and the way it works is depending on the calendar. I go to Vegas the first weekend of the NCAA tournament, which is next week. But if our high school tournament's not over, which in this particular year it's not, I'm here. Now, next year, our tournament will be over the weekend before the NCAA basketball tournament. So all who are in that could be when I get stuck off 29 and on to 30.
That would be lovely. Yeah, it's funny. I was trying to think about it. I'm probably in the 20s myself, but yeah, it's been a few years. All my friends, we have a big text thread of all my friends that usually go, and we've been trying to figure out the next time. That first weekend of the tournament is a fantastic weekend. I mean, aside from the fact that you have to get a table at like 7 o'clock in the morning, and if you're depending on what time you go to sleep, can be problematic. But
yeah, well, I believe it or not, Pete, I do out there what I do at home. I'm playing racing pretty much all day. I obviously play in the games, but I'm usually able to score some seats in the race book area, and then go up to the window. There'll be like a line of 100 people wanting to bet a game. I'll go up and bet an exacta box and say, oh, by the way, could you give me game number or whatever? And works like a charm.
Well, and the beauty used to be when you go to the race. We used to stay at Excalibur back in the day because it was cheap and it was convenient. And they have a pretty big sports book. And when you'd go to the horse racing. The horse racing window, they give you extra tickets because you didn't have to bet as much to get the free drink tickets. So you'd go and you bet like 100 on a game and you get one ticket. You go and you bet like a 10 to win on a horse and they give you 5 tickets. And I'm like, oh, this is just coming in handy. I like this.
Oh yeah, no, we used to go to Paris and then Bally's, and we would stack the drink tickets.
That was the best.
Same deal. Oh,
that was the best. Actually,
Pete, let's go, Pete. Next year, opening weekend of the NCAA tournament. Let's go.
Let's do it. Yes. Although I don't think I could handle the old schedule I used to keep when I was a little bit younger. But I'll have to get a little more sleep now, I think.
I will take you, Pete, to a very good off-strip Italian restaurant.
That would be lovely.
Called Nora's Italian Cuisine. It's about 5 to 10 minutes off-strip. It's not fantastic. A fancy place, just like a simple place. Terrific reasonably priced Italian food. Been there many
That's
times.
fantastic. I love it. I don't really eat there usually. I usually scrounge for whatever's in the,
Yeah.
in the food court near the
Yeah.
closest to the sports book or the casino. Actually, before we get into the race, let's say hi and let's see. So Vale Place was here like 10 minutes early. So A+, I gave him an A+ for showing up so early. We got Ralph. Here we go. Can go over the money. Welcome, Ralph. Here we go. $100 pick fives tonight, Ralph. I stayed under, Paul. I don't know about you. We'll get to you, but I
did.
Did you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, I did.
We got Michael. Hello from Vegas. Jimmy. We got all kinds of people here. Penn State Scott in the house, of course.
Big game. That's right. The Cats.
Yeah, Penn State's playing. Actually, it could be. I didn't see the score. Penn State Scott, throw it up in here. They're playing a tough one against Illinois. Sort of need the win to get in. Can we have shows without Howard all the time? I like the way you think, Noah.
Wow.
There we go.
Wow.
That's what I'm talking about.
Oh, wow.
David, we got a Wally Pipp reference, a little March Madness. Kyle didn't qualify as of yet. I think he might be trying to play in like
today.
One of those. Was it today? Last minute qualifiers. I haven't
heard
anything.
Looks like Racing Downwind has some updates here. He says Matt Miller has $91 and Kyle has 76.
Oh, there it is. Yes, Kyle 76.60. Matt Miller 91.80.
I don't see if they have if those guys. Yeah, if Racing Downwind, if you have the link to those standings, put them in the chat and we can all follow.
Yeah, definitely. We could do that. And we got Nick Feldman, who made an appearance, I saw on Twitter, made an appearance on the Magic Mike show today as the step-in handicapper for Mike Somich. So hope Nick that went good. Well. Yeah, so hopefully he could bring all that knowledge and sort of repeat all that stuff in our chat today. Here we go. Thank you, Ross. Penn State up 2. That'll be a big win. All my college friends who actually still love Penn State, they're all on the edge of their seat right now. So hopefully we can get the win for them. So actually, let's stop blabbing along here. Let's get into the races a bit. So, like we said, we're going to do the late pick 5. And for everyone, this starts in the 7th. So it's the 7th to the 11th. So it doesn't include the 12th. So they included all the stakes races, which is fantastic. So for once, we're not ending with, I assume the last one's a maiden. I didn't even look at it. We're ending with the big race of the day, which is excellent. So let's look at this one. First race, the Columbia Stakes. For 3-year-olds, 75 grand, a mile on the turf. The favorite, the tight field, I like these. The favorite is number 1, Freedom Trail. So let's get into, let me put our picks up on the screen here. So Paul, obviously I'm going to, since you are our only co-host and it's our special guest apparently, I'm going to let you go first every time. So you are starting with, you actually went with a horse that I did not go with. You went with the 9, Mustache. Talk us through. What are you thinking here?
Well, obviously the layoff is somewhat of a concern. Vicky Oliver doesn't run a lot of horses in the Breeders' Cup. I was really happy that she got this colt into the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf last year.
Yeah.
It was a little bit of a reach. The horse won a maiden and then had only managed a second in a listed stakes at Keeneland. The horse ran very creditably, Pete, in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf.
I mean, made a winning move, just got swallowed up by some better horses.
I'll tell you, if you didn't have this horse at 50-1, you were a little nervous, right, in the stretch. But, I think I'm not that concerned about the layoff. She's pretty good. Her numbers are okay in this situation. Yeah. The horse adds Lasix as a 3-year-old. Ironically, her numbers adding Lasix are not good, but I don't see that as a negative to a horse. So, and again, I pay a lot of attention to jockeys, probably too much. Picks up Luis Saez, who, looking at that last running line, boy, that's a Luis Saez type
like
running line, isn't it?
So perfect. Yeah.
I went in that direction. I am intrigued by the 1. You mentioned the 1, Pete. I know you picked the 1 second. I picked them 3rd. I think this is, I often talk on the show a lot about DFS, Derby Fever Syndrome.
First thing I thought of.
And this horse got it early. This horse had an early case before he even turned 3. they said, let's see, that Kentucky Jockey Club races typically draws a pretty good field because I think it's probably the last points race of the 2-year-old year.
Yeah.
I'd be almost sure.
Well, I mean, if you look on the screen, you see we got Instant Coffee. Like these are horses that have been running Instant Coffee.
Red Route Run,
Red
my
Route One,
guy.
your
Cyclone
guy,
Mischief,
Dennington.
who was
Cyclone
Mischief has not run well, but went off as the favorite in the Holy Bull.
Yeah, I mean, these are
and ran a little better in the
better
Fountain of
last
Youth.
week. Yep.
Looks like the distance is an issue, but my point is I think they wanted to get an idea. Do we go on dirt on this horse? And it seems like the answer was resolving no, because they're back on turf to open this season.
Yeah.
It's a war front mare. The horse is bred for turf, and to do what you often do, Pete. If you throw out that dirt race, right, you're looking at a horse who's undefeated, 2 for 2, right? So
I mean, I love that because it muddies the form. I mean, he's the favorite. He's the favorite here, but generally, if you have a little bit more races in there, it can muddy it up, and people overlook it because they see an 8th place finish last time out. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. So I think I think in this mile configuration, no reason to expect it won't be a good trip, and. Irad rode the horse, and once Jose broke the maiden, Irad rode the horse. Irad's obviously in town for the big race, but Irad picks up the mountain this horse. That's not going to upset me, anyone who's using the horse. So, I think the horse has got a big shot. And I almost picked, though, you should talk about the 7 who you picked, because I picked the 7 second and almost picked them on top. So go ahead.
Yeah, and just to say one last thing on the 1, I agree with you. The one cool thing is, hey, let's not waste a couple races on the dirt in the 3-year-old season that he's going to get pounded in. And, maybe, I mean, it's hard to gauge horse confidence and things like that. But you see some of these horses, they try the dirt when they're not supposed to, or they try the distances that they're not supposed to try, and they take a pounding. And then when they get back to doing what they should be doing, sometimes it seems like it took a little bit of starch out of them. So it's nice to see them saying, you know what, this is a turf horse. Let's sort of just ride with the turf horse. So you talked about the 7. I have this one on top. You have this one in second. Worthington, Mike Maker picking up Paco Lopez. I mean, this one is more of it's a very similar case to the 1. A few more races. You see, comes out, first race, runs a decent 3rd, then breaks the maiden, goes up in allowance. The buyers are going up. Goes into a stakes race, runs 3rd to Candidate and Major Due, to have come back and have become, excellent horses on the turf. So definitely no shame there. Come back in the 2nd race of the year and say, hey, you know what? Let's give this dirt thing a try. Let's see what happens here. And you see the result here. Just got pounded. So again, that's a 10th by 21. So that looks kind of ugly. But I feel like now you're getting a horse who's going back to doing what they should be doing, just like we talked about. This horse is tactical, so should be able to sit close enough to the pace to pounce. It's been working well. I like that work 2 back. You see at Gulfstream, there's a 4 furlong, 48 flat work. So I just think this horse, again, you're getting a horse that's coming back onto the turf, doing what he's supposed to be doing. When that happens, it's hard to go away from the horse, and especially because you're getting 9-2 on a horse that has run against some pretty high quality in the past. So that's where I'm going to go. Is there anyone else before we go to the next one? Anyone else you want to talk about?
I think we should talk about the 10, because you picked the horse 3rd.
I forgot. I picked yes.
The horse has the biggest last race buyer. This was a horse who did it in reverse, moved to turf last time at Tampa for Shug McGahee, ran a huge number, an 85 under Sammy Camacho, who keeps them out. The only thing I'm wondering about, and it's not a big sample, only 2 horses have come back out of that last race, but both were no factor. One of them's buyer went down by 8 points, and the other one, buyer, stayed exactly the same. You're looking at it there. Yeah. So I'm thinking maybe that race was not a key race. The 10 is a little far outside, even though there's a decent run to the turn. It's going to be a little more trip dependent from there. obviously had a very good trip last time, sat right off the lead, and again won impressively, and no argument with anyone who's picking this horse. I'm kind of hoping the horse gets bet a little more than the morning line because I'm going to be against them a little bit.
Well, that was my one thought with this one was, hey, you popped the 85. Yeah, it definitely was a weak field, and even when you watched it, just looked like the best horse in the race. But if it's just a good horse who just takes to the turf, and when I looked at the pedigree, I actually had a note in there. The family, there's multiple graded stakes winners from the progeny perspective on turf and in the pedigree itself. So it seems like maybe this one just took to the turf because that's what it should have been doing from the beginning. And if that's the case, then if there's a move forward from here, then again, now you're talking from the 10 hole, you're going to get a tougher trip. You're facing tougher horses, but maybe this horse is just quality and that could be enough. I like that. Thanks, Vale Place. Carrying a two-legged stool. That's a good one. I like that one.
And Shug McGahee, Pete, does not put his horses in the wrong spots typically.
No, and he's generally not going to take a swing when it's not the right thing for the horse. And the only thing now that the 9 is on the screen, my only concern, I didn't know if you had it, his two best races were at 5.5. And so my concern was, and not that he didn't run great in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf, but you could tell even though he took the lead, he got rolled over. They were much better horses. But my concern with him was, is he going to be a horse that can stay out the distance, or is he going to be better going shorter? That was the only reason I left that horse off, because I think on talent, he fits right in there with everyone else.
Well, it's a good question, Pete, because, if you look at that Keeneland, the second Keeneland race,
yeah,
I don't know if it says he got off a step slow, and I didn't watch the race, but that race is a real outlier as far as the style, but the horse, totally different style and came running at the end. My thinking on that, Pete, is that's where I'm kind of betting that Louis is going to make a difference and he's going to move. A horse like this, it looks like when you move in this race is going to be really important.
Yeah.
And, and I'm rooting for Louis to have a big day, Pete. We'll talk about that later.
We'll talk about that. Oh, here we go. Sammy Shug, 3 for their last 5 together. We always like seeing that. All right, let's move on to the next one. So we will go to the 8th, and the 8th race is the Michelob Ultra, if you wanted to do some sponsorship, Challenger Stakes, purse 100,000, 4-year-olds and up, 1 mile and a 16th on the dirt. The favorite, a horse we know from some of the bigger races, 8-5, number 2, Skippy Long Stocking, another Irad favorite with Safi Joseph. And you have, right there. So you have the 2, I have the 2. I'll let you talk about the 2 first. Let me refresh my screen here since TRF is acting silly. Number 2, Skippy Longstocking. We're both going with the chalk on top here. What drove you to that one? I'm sure you probably wanted to beat an 8-5 favorite in a race that doesn't have that isn't like a dominant winning type horse, but it was tough here, right?
Yeah, and there's two things you got to do to beat the favorite. You got to be willing to try to beat the favorite, and you need to have the horse to beat the favorite.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk about the 6 when we get to it. I think the 6 is a very good price play. He's going to certainly be an underneath play for me. Will be probably a B on my horizontals. But you and I talked before we got on the air. I think, Pete, if it's not the 2, you really could probably make a case almost for the other 8. And we'll get to talking about. I want to talk about Brooklyn Strong before we leave.
Sure.
I know he's 30-1, but I'd be remiss because I have a long history with that horse. But
okay.
So I mean, Skippy Longstocking, he really did, to Safi's credit. He danced a lot of the dances last year, Pete. Right? He ran the Preakness, the Belmont, won the West Virginia Derby. He ran dreadful in the Pennsylvania Derby, a race that I was at. I'm not sure exactly what happened that day, but he was never in it for a second.
He was getting some love going into that race too. He was getting love going in there.
Yeah, he was. Because I'll tell you what, 10-1 in that field, Pete, means he took some money likes of Tabor, Zandon, and Cyberknife, right? And then they really, for a horse that ran that much as a 3-year-old 9 times, really only 2 months off and back at it on New Year's Eve. And he runs a monster Howland's Holiday. And, now he's in the Pegasus last time. That field was obviously very good. You saw Defunded came back and ran pretty well. Stiletto came back and won the big cap.
Yeah.
Our Collector is a serious horse. There's nothing in this race, Pete, that looks like Our Collector Defunded a Stiletto boy. Remote.
No, definitely not.
So,
definitely not.
Again, I don't want to say I defaulted, but I just think that, it's not a layoff. Now, is the last race an indication that he might be over the top from all that racing? Well, if you want to beat him, then I think that's your argument, right?
The one thing I looked at, and if people can read my scratchy notes up there, but the one thing I looked at is this horse has only really performed badly in the grade 1 races. So when he's sort of taken that step down a bit, grade 2, grade 3, and then before that, he actually runs his better races. You could see, actually, Nick made a comment here. Yeah. Type E is winning 54%, EP is winning 23%. The one thing I like about the 2 here is when he's in a little bit of a lower race with lesser horses, he actually is close to the front. I mean, he sits right off. Yeah. He's tactical. So if he runs that same kind of race, then I think, and especially with Irad back up again, I think he'll keep him close. He probably knows he has the best horse. So I assume he's going to ride him, hopefully, like he has the best horse. Like you talked about the 6. You have the 6 in second. That's a price. The Reds at 12-1 for Safi Joseph. Again, what do you like about this one?
Well, what do I like about this one? Obviously, over his head last time, although, the horse he lost to everyone, but the horse that won the race, came back and beat Charger, who I thought was a mortal lock last week at Gulfstream. So what the hell do I know? This horse has kept pretty good company. Doesn't run that well with it, but Nick Feldman brings up a good point about the race style, and this horse goes against that. But I'm looking at this horse to come up and maybe get on the board, right? And I do think second off the layoff, Safi's, especially in Florida, is pretty much high percentage, whatever category you want to formulate, right, Pete?
Yeah.
Formulator. He is. He is. I just think that there is Classic Causeway. Who knows? You and I talked about that horse before we got on. When the horse is best, the horse goes. I think the horse has been best going on turf and going to the lead, but you got to. Well, I'm about to say you got to figure the horse is going to go, and then I see Mr. J.R. Leperoux on top. So that theory might be out the window.
I mean, but that's the kind of horse that can't win though any other way. So when you have horses who can't win any other way, it's not like you're going to all of a sudden take a horse back and try and close when you have a horse that just doesn't know how to do that.
And again, the Reds has some races at a mile and an eighth, granted, but at Saratoga, but where he has been closer to the pace. The 2 good races he ran at Saratoga, which I know were optional claiming. He was not up in for a tag, but he put up his 2 best buyer numbers in those races, and he was very much right on the pace. And, this is really a graded stakes in name only, right? I mean,
this. If you told me this was an optional claim or like a high level allowance, I wouldn't think twice about it. Based on the horses that are in it.
Certainly, if you take Skippy out, the one has kept some pretty good company, but this is he's not an iron type race. So I just think the 6 has a chance. I think he might get lost a little in the wagering, and I think he's got a chance to hit the board. That's all.
Well, let's hit your last one. You have the 8 business model, 6-1 Brendan Walsh. Again, your guy Saez picking it up. What do you like this one as a potential winner, or was this like a hey, I'm filling out my top 3 kind of thing here? Or
I think it's more of that. And again, this horse is coming off a couple of dreadful races, and then the 2 before that, very good. This horse again is against race flow, to Nick Feldman's very good point, but there's only 9 in here, so unless you think they're just going to run around like a merry-go-round, which they could. The more we talk, Pete, it's looking like Skippy's going to be tough to beat, by the way.
Yeah,
the more
I'm
we're
agreeing
talking
with
out
you.
loud
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
You know what I mean? But yeah, again, Louis tends to have horses maybe a little closer than they look on paper. Louis not really, especially on dirt, make one run from the back kind of guy.
No, definitely not. Definitely not.
So, it's more of a fill out the ticket. But, I could, anyone who wants to single the 2 and try to get by this race, I could see. Anyone who wants to say, you know what, I'm going to spread like hell because if the 2 doesn't win, I could get a price. I can see that too.
I agree with you. I'll hit mine real quick. So the number 7,
Sure.
Tax. This is one of those horses. This is one of those horses that I never quit. I always wind up coming back to. I just like the horse. I think he's he's tough. He runs. He tries. He's just had some bad luck. Obviously, he's had a little bit of injury stuff go on. My thought with him was and here's another one, when he's not in a grade 1, and obviously that last try on the turf, which again muddies up the form, when he's not in a grade 1 race, he actually runs pretty well. And again, now we're talking about a grade 3 that's not even really a high quality grade 3. So I'm looking at it going, if this horse can find a little bit of that past form, his figures fit. He's beaten good horses before, and that's all these horses are, good horses. If you look here on his work tab, he's got the last one, 48-4, second out of 38. Not the quickest thing in the world, but it just shows that hopefully he's in shape. We have Paco up, so Paco should probably be aggressive, keep this horse close. This is one who's won on the lead, but I do think can also sit off second, third, and actually pass horses. So it's a shot with a horse who I just sort of enjoy. But again, he's hard to figure because he tends to sometimes throw in a clunker out of nowhere. So if you get that one at 4-1, it's not the best thing in the world. Oh, here we go. Nick, I also like Tax throughout his last races. They're just not his game. Yeah, that's my thing. I mean, you're talking about the turf. This one was taken off the turf in the slop and then 1.25 miles in the grade 1 Jockey Club Gold Cup. Definitely not exactly the races he should be in order to get his best stuff.
The only thing is my friend Russ Blacker.
Yeah.
From
why they get that
road.
6 on the turf? Yeah, he was asking about why they work the 6 on the.
I'm looking for that. Where is that work?
Yeah. I don't know. I don't see that there. Yeah. No, I don't see that unless you're talking about a different horse. Hit back in the chat. Oh, he said the 8. Sorry, not the 6. Yeah, they were working model. They were working business model for the.
Well, they ran them on synthetic last time.
Yeah,
so
they might have been prepping them for that. Yep.
The other thing about Tax, and I can see Tax, we don't have to talk about Tax's potential. I mean, the horse, he won the good Jim Dandy. I can't believe the horse is 7, by the way.
I know, that's ridiculous.
My issue is to try to run him for the first time on turf late in his 6-year-old year, and it gets taken off. And then to start him on turf, to start his 7-year-old year, are they just like, you know what, nothing else is working? If the turf works, we'll keep running them. If not, we'll call it a day, right?
Yeah.
So that's my only thinking on that. I mean, hey, look, I obviously love to see Danny Gargan do well. He's a New York, under the radar New York guy. So I just, again, I think because of Tax's running lines, Pete, he's going to take some money.
Yeah.
And I don't like that experiment, so we'll see.
I mean, I have no problem with if anyone wanted to toss him. I mean, I guess that one thing could be is you look at the nominations and you see who's in it and you go, hey, this is actually a dirt race. We think we can win. It's coming up a little soft. Last one, I won't go into too much detail. We talked about him a little. Classic Causeway. I put him in third from the pure perspective of what if this horse, putting him back on the dirt, what if he just gets a clear lead, runs out, and walks around the track? And if he does that, you're always pissed when you get knocked out by the speed horse who just goes on the lead and doesn't get caught. And this is actually a quality one. I mean, he was a little better on the turf. Some of that stuff is a little false because there were some weak fields, but he was getting to the lead. He was running strong fractions and he was holding a little bit. And I mean, these are better horses, even though they're turf horses. These are better quality horses that are in this field. So it wouldn't shock me.
I got to tell you, Pete, I'm going to tell you, this horse ran his eyeballs out in the Saratoga Derby, which I saw in person. Yeah. I mean, For those who
I thought he was going to hold
know,
again. I thought he was going to hold.
Yeah. For those who may not know, that Nation's Pride is pretty good. It wears blue silks, Godolphin silks. That horse is pretty good.
Yeah.
Okay. Annapolis, whom I bet in the Breeders' Cup to my detriment, but still, I just think the horse is better on turf. Again, Ken McPeak knows what he's doing. But I think if in some of these turf races we're looking at today, Pete, this horse could have been very, very formidable, right? Vale Places. Well, I will say that this horse's style is to go. Now the horse had some good dirt races. Throw out the Florida Derby and Kentucky Derby. He won the Tampa Bay Derby on this dirt
Well,
he's
two for two here. So, I mean, maybe that was part of the thinking too. He's 2 for 2 on this course on the front end. His figures are a little light because he never really kept progressing into his 3-year-old season. He didn't progress later in the year. He didn't come back. So, I mean, again, this is more of a speed play. I did have a stat, McPeak, 3 for 34 wins with 4-year-old and up, graded stakes, dirt routes, take that for whatever it's worth. It's a little bit granular, but I mean, maybe he just for some, because his 3-year-olds, they wind up, you feel like they upset some races, but maybe once they get older, he doesn't seem to do that as much, but we'll see. Again, not a world beater, but if you can get a speed horse that can wire the field, I'll give it a shot.
And hey, look, Pete, the horse is a homebred who's earned $1.3 million. So
I'll take it, right? I'll take it.
I gotta have 2 minutes.
Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot. Brooklyn Strong. Yes, I forgot.
So Brooklyn Strong is 30-1. I talk about the Derby fever syndrome. So if you go all the way back to the last running line on the, if you only have 12, the Remsen, not the Remsen, the Sleepy Hollow.
Yep.
That was a race that I covered, virtually for the special because it was a New York bred race. The horse ran the best 2-year-old figure, I believe, of that year might have been his Remsen 94. Okay.
Yeah. So
now he goes into the 3-year-old year, and look at Mark Schwartz is a Florida guy. He is a terrific guy. I've come to know him very well. He paid $5,000 for this horse at auction. Wow. Okay. Now, hey, you might be on the Derby trail. So they kind of go back and forth, right? They run him in the wood, which I was at, and he runs up the track. But the Remsen was a 10-point race. Okay.
Yep.
They started dropping like flies that Derby, in 2021. So 2 weeks before the race, on a Friday night, they put out the updated standings. And what they do is when they don't think a horse is running, Pete, they put a line through him, right?
Yeah.
So I get a text from Mark Schwartz, and he says, hey, we got 10 points. How come we're not listed in the standings? I said, well, that's because they don't think you want to run. If you want to run, you got to let them know you want to run. So what does he do? He contacts Churchill Downs and says, yeah, we'll run. Well, Pete, in 2021, 10 points got him into the Kentucky
Derby. Unbelievable.
Now, again, would I do that with the horse I paid $5,000 for? Absolutely. I mean, that's this guy's one shot in a lifetime, and no one can begrudge him.
And it's not like he embarrassed himself in the wood. I could have seen, if he ran dead last and got killed, and then you still wind up running.
Yeah,
but I mean, it was a weird race. That was a weird race anyway.
It was 2 feet deep dirt that day. It was okay. Unfortunately, the way that it's turned out, however, some horses don't recover from that one shot in the Derby, right? Yeah. It's a 20-horse race. You finish 18 lengths behind, and this horse has run some good thirds, but some of those New York bred races, he should have been winning. But I just want to realize this is an example of a horse. They took this shot. I don't think you can begrudge them taking this shot. He paid $5,000 for the horse. All of a sudden, hey, you can get into Kentucky Derby. You only have 10 points. And he's like, where do I sign?
Sign me up. Sign me up.
And it was Danny Velasquez was training him at the time, Pete. He was a Parks trainer. Never been the Derby before. I hope he goes again. He's a great guy, but there's a chance he never goes again. and they took this shot. It didn't work out, but that's the Brooklyn Strong story.
No, I love it. I love it because that's, I mean, and yeah, especially for you, I know you with the story behind it is always going to appreciate that. But yeah, I mean, nobody's going to begrudge guys who have a $5,000 horse who has a shot to get to the Derby. That's what everyone dreams about when you buy a horse. As unrealistic as it sounds, that's what you're going to look to try and do. So no begrudging there at all. All right, let's get on to the ninth. We'll try and speed some of these up. This is a shorter field. The ninth, the Hillsborough Stakes, purse $225,000. Fillies and mares, 4-year-old and up, 1 1/8 on the turf. The favorite, and look at this: 7 horses, 3 Chad Browns. One of them's the favorite. One of them is a second choice. The favorite, number 6, Shantasara. The favorite is Irad. Has that happened? I mean, what is this? That's 3 straight in the pick 5 with the favorite being Irad. So we'll skip to this, and you have the 3 horse Temple City Terror on top. Why don't you talk us through? You're going to try and beat the 3 Chads. I love it.
Well, timing is everything, Pete. So I listen when I'm in the car. I listen to podcasts, and it's almost always on the In the Money Media Network through a good friend Peter Thomas Fonatal and his group.
Shout out
to
them.
The last few days, I've listened to the JK Plus One. He's back doing that JK Plus One, which is a great, an in-depth interview. And lo and behold, it's Brendan Walsh. And one of the horses they're talking about is Temple City Terror. And the last thing I heard from Brendan Walsh today was, Jonathan, he said, with his little Irish lilt, he said, I don't see any reason why this horse can't have his best year ever at age 7. So
I love it. By the way. Take the drink.
So, Pete, sometimes you got to just read the signs and listen. And I will say, though, this has been this has been a hard knocking mare, right? She's danced a lot of dances, not a grade 1 horse, a lot of grade 2s, a lot of grade 3s. That's what this is. This is a grade 2. Walsh indicated that he thinks that she might just come back running. And, as we know, it's tough to beat Chad. We love Chad. But if you do, you get paid, Pete, right? So I am going to take my shot there. I do think Shantasara, your horse, and the favorite is the logical horse to beat.
Yeah, let's jump to her. And I agree with you on the 3. I have the 3 in second. It's a horse that at 7-year-old horse, you love to see sort of capturing their best form. I mean, you have now, I think, I don't remember if I checked all the races, but I assume these are back-to-back lifetime buyer tops at the end of her 6-year-old season, which is impressive enough as it is. So you're not expecting a whole ton of improvement, but in this field, which again, it's not world beaters, I think just form can bring this one. If this one can run either one of those 2 races, I think it puts her right in the mix. So let's jump to this. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, 99, of course, who'll win this, Pete. I don't pick Rougier, so Rougier will win.
Well,
Howard and I are just always wrong about Rougier.
We have some comments about Ruggiero. Well, that's who Tom is a big shot. He gets to run with Lasix, so that usually does help. We'll get to Ruggiero in a second, actually. So for me, with Shantasara, this is just one. I think she's probably the best horse in the race. If you look at her last 3. So she's lost her last 3. To me, and I thought about this because I bet against her. This was actually the race I had on Pegasus Day to do the write-up for. And I took Queen Goddess, and one of the reasons was because I just thought it was a little too short. Shantasara seems like she needs a little more distance. Now you're getting her back at 1 1/8, right? If I'm remembering, this is the 1 1/8 this race, I think. So now you're getting her. Yeah. So now you're getting her, I think, at the preferred distance she wants. With that, with Irad, she still ran a bang-up race in the Pegasus. She just couldn't. Queen Goddess just got the jump, and I think she just ran out of real estate. So for me, this is a logical favorite. It's obviously a Chad Brown, so you're not breaking any news here. But I'll take this one on top. I'm with you with the 3, like I said. Why don't we hit your other one first? We'll hit the 1, California Queen, the other Chad in this case.
Right, and that's, what, and it seems like, Pete, the other, has a pretty good winning percentage.
They do okay, right? They do okay.
And Chad and Baffert on the West Coast. But yeah, again, more of a horse to finish out. The horses run third 5 times. The one is, this is an interesting configuration to point this out. They run out of a chute.
Yeah, if you can
and
see
then
up
here. Kind of a sharp left-hand turn. So you do kind of have to get away from there if you're inside, because, when all those horses start making the sharp left, they might look like Boston drivers and cut you off. Okay. But I think the horse, again, more of an underneath threat, but, I think, and the wild card, Pete, is Rougier, which Rougier shows up. The Lasix point is a very good one because, the race at Woodbine, she finally came back to form, and the EP Taylor, that's a big race. Moira is the Canadian heroine, as it were, up there. They ran her against boys in the Breeders' Cup, I believe. Didn't work out that well, but
no, she was in the filly and mare turf. You could see
she was okay.
Yeah. But didn't run a step for some reason. I mean, that even for her,
Moira,
who I didn't like the horse. Oh, you're talking about Moira. I'm sorry.
I think Moira, they ran against the boys.
Yeah, sorry about
Cup.
That. Yes.
Yeah, this horse, again, and was bet kind of. Yeah, I mean, look, it was a Breeders' Cup turf race, and this horse had run like 7 races in America. So just throw out the Americans, and you'll be fine. You had Tuesday. An Italian ran very creditably, I would say. An Italian ran credit. Anyway, if the quote real Rougier shows up that won the Beaugay at Belmont, won the Prix des Opera, which is a huge race. Now we're going back 2.5 years. Pardon me, 1.5 years. Sure. I think the morning line is probably right about, going to take money, but not going to be the favorite.
No, I agree with you. It's just a horse that I'm with you. I always seem to be on the wrong end. Thanks, Vale, by the way. This is the basement for everyone back there. I know people get to see my background, so it is a nice little area. So it's mine. I get to decorate it nicely. My wife doesn't get to touch this area, so that's why it looks so sharp. Obviously, I have much better taste than she does. Hopefully, she is not upstairs watching right now. But yeah, no, I agree with you. And again, if Rougier won the race, I mean, nobody's going to be shocked. The horse has talent. I mean, when she came over. With that sort of, I didn't love that race, the Beaugay, as much as other people did. I was kind of surprised when people were giving it so much love, but I figure, hey, this isn't the greatest field in the world. There's not a ton of speed, which if she's a little too far back, that would be a concern, but there's mostly closers in here. So it's not exactly like anybody's going to be running away on the front end, I don't assume. Real quick, I'll just say I like Gam's Mission in third. Sherry DeVoe. Again, this one's another big closer. Just seems to be in form. Has run back in the day in 21, was running in a little bit, hit the grade 1 trail a little bit here. So not exactly the highest quality in the last few races compared to some of these, but beat Delika last out. I just think this is a horse that is in enough form, doesn't necessarily win, but definitely has a good shot to hit underneath. I see.
And if people are concerned, Pete, about Hector Diaz being on Rougier, remember Hector Diaz was riding Bleecker Street when Bleecker Street was tearing it up at Tampa. And her a few starts there. So I know it's not Pratt, but if you like Rougier, don't be afraid of Hector Diaz.
No, not at all. Not at all. Let's skip. I see Jim joined us in the background there, so we'll get going a bit here. Let's move on to the 10th, the Florida Oaks. This is a big field here. So Florida Oaks, purse $200,000, 3-year-olds, 1.116 on the turf. And the favorite we have is the number 10, Free Look, another Chad Brown. And hey, another Irad Ortiz horse as the favorite. That's 4 straight in this sequence. So if you just want a single Irad all the way through, it won't pay much. But if you play it for like $50, maybe you'll make a little bit of money. So, Paul, you and I went with the same horse on top. We both have the 3, Alpha Bella. Nice 9-2 shot. What do you like about this one for Fletcher and Saez?
Pete, why don't you go first? Because this race for me was
great. Why'd you pick this race?
This race for me was like trying to interpret the Sphinx or whatever. You talk about the freight.
I'll talk a little bit. So the couple things I liked. I like a horse that, and we've talked about this in other races, wasn't that great on the dirt. Put the horse on the turf, wins first out, going a mile, 70 buyer, breaks the maiden. They go right into a grade 3, loses to Cairo Consort, who then, if you look at Cairo Consort from sort of that race forward, now you're talking about comes back grade 3, but this is Cairo Consort, who ran 3rd in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf, 2nd in grade 1s. It's a quality horse, and you're talking about the second time on turf for this horse. So I'm looking at it going, maybe they just found what this horse likes to do. And now that she's on turf, she's just going to keep improving. And you have Saez, so she's tactical enough. So I think it's Saez at his best is when he, like you said before, he could be forwardly placed. He could be tactical. He doesn't have a horse that's too far back. One thing, I mean, Justify, I talk about this a lot on the dirt, and I actually will mention this in the next race. Justify isn't great when he's going, over a mile, but he's actually a little bit better with his turf horses. He's had more winners.
Enough.
Yeah, oddly enough, he's got his turf horses have had a little bit more success. So I figure that's not going to scare me off. There was one stat, Pletcher Saez, 7 for 61 in graded stakes on turf. So they don't seem to, for some reason, they don't pair up well on the turf. It's not necessarily Pletcher's super forte anyway, but he is 3 for 11, 8 for 11 turf routes. I think that might actually be a Tampa stat. I just didn't type it in there, but I just think it's a horse that's on the up and up. And in this race, the buyers aren't very high for any of these horses. So I'm looking for a horse who hasn't run a ton and maybe still has even more improvement than you normally get from 2 to 3. So I don't know if that'll convince anybody, but I don't know if that's sort of on your wavelength what you were thinking about this.
Yeah, I did make note of Cairo Consort. I think Cairo Consort's a very good horse, and has come back as a 3-year-old to have 2 wins and a third, I believe, 2 wins and a third by a head.
Yeah,
all at Gulfstream. So yeah, I do think that's a factor. I agree with you on Justify. Probably, ironically, they're a little better going long on turf than dirt. And, on the dam side, obviously bred for turf every day plus Sunday with a Singspiel mare.
Yeah.
So, I went there, and, I went with Brian Lynch's horse coming off the maiden win, which is a tough move. But I think this is the type of race that you could come off a maiden win. I almost went with, it's funny, Pete, I was going to either go with the 11 second or the 2.
Okay.
I went with the 11.
That's
you
funny.
went with the 2.
I went with the 2.
I'm guessing you were thinking the same thing, right? This is a race for first-time winners, even though it's a stakes. You might be able to do some damage.
I mean, I think this is one. I don't think it was the best field and didn't come home. Like if you look at incremental times, didn't come home with the strongest time, but it was the first race over, breaking the maiden, and was pretty impressive doing it. And look at that breeding. I mean, out of a Kingman sire, Dark Angel dam. I mean, that Dark Angel mare, I should say. I just think this horse is bred well for the turf. I don't think the extra, distance should be any problem. I just think this one, again, the 70 buyer doesn't scream at you, but if there's a move forward, I like this one. This one is on my ticket. I think it was probably like my. You see, I have it in the 1 position. I think it was like my 4th or 5th, so it was right off the board there. Real quick, why don't you talk quickly about the Chad Brown Irad, the 10, the favorite, 2-1 free look. I mean, this is a course. If you just look on the page, there's quality races, so it seems like a worthy enough favorite.
Yeah, so this is a Klarovich horse, $300,000, kind of a modest purchase price for Seth Klarman.
Yeah.
Although Seth is not a guy, he's not afraid to spend money, but he's also, he's not in the Zidane category either when it comes to buying. But anyway, obviously turf all the way, came from way, way behind in the opener at Saratoga, won pretty easily on closing weekend at Saratoga. Chad had enough confidence to come back in the Miss Rio grade 2, which is typically a really good prep for the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf. Ran well, didn't really run well, didn't have a good trip in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf, but, it's a long layoff, but it's Chad. And, certainly whether you want to be offensive or defensive. If you're playing ABC, the horse is an A all the way.
Yeah, and I mean, I think this horse has had some bad luck. Sometimes horses make their own bad luck, but just seems to get knocked around a bunch. So if it gets a clean trip, she can reverse the fortunes a little bit. Again, if it's bad luck that's beating her, well, that's one thing. If it's better horses, but the horses in here aren't as good as Meditate and even Pleasant Passage, and probably even Cairo Consort. So I think the 10 hole could be problematic. If this horse gets sort of hung out to dry, but I mean, first race of the year, you never know. The last one I'll just touch on is the 2. I sort of had the 2 as similar to what the other one was. This was a $700,000 purchase. They went on the dirt to open in her debut, didn't run well at all. Say, hey, let's try the turf out in 23. Breaks the maiden, 76 buyer, so very solid buyer. Shug, 32%. In turf routes at Tampa. So obviously can, places horses well here, but this is one, it's probably going to be a little bit more than this horse can chew right off the bat coming off the maiden breaker. But I figure in a race where, as we'll see when we get to our pick 5 tickets, I'm sort of wide open, then I like to have a little bit of a price with a horse who's young enough to still have, we don't know. Maybe this horse just should have been on the turf and is going to improve. And if it takes a step forward, then I think is quality enough to beat this field. All right, let's jump.
Pete, can I make a recommendation, Pete?
Yeah.
Since we're going into the feature, why don't we bring on our esteemed guest?
I was literally going to
now?
say the same thing.
I'm hoping he likes Tapit Trice. I want all the positive vibes for Tapit Trice. If he doesn't like Tapit Trice, he's going back into the green room until we go back.
I'll cut him off. Yes. So sitting in the back there, we have our friend from Hawthorne Racecourse, Jim Miller. Let's bring him in. Hey, Jim, how's it going?
Hey, Jimmy.
Oh, well, at least I get to stay in the room for a little bit then, guys. So that's a good thing.
Absolutely.
So that sounds like you're on the HHH podcast train with Tapit Trice here.
How can you not be? And the beautiful thing about it is you still get a large field, and it's something that has really been kind of nice for those 3-year-old preps over the course of the last few weeks. It's not a bunch of 6 and 7 horse fields. So when you're catching 10, 11, 12, you start to wonder, okay, Tapit Trice, you're seeing 8 to 5. You think, maybe that's okay. Maybe that's worth a play. You'll have to see who you can hook it up with. If this is a 7-horse field, the horse is probably 3 to 5 off that last out. But numbers-wise, because it's a larger field, it's a really big, it's just one of those things where you're coming off the big efforts. Everything's heading in the right direction. I guess to me, the only worry that I was looking at this horse too was the last race, which was a big race, came with Lasix. Now you're coming back off Lasix, but you look at those races prior, those are pretty good starts and probably good enough to beat this field also.
Yeah, I think that was one thing. And Paul's a Tapit Trice guy, so I'll let him talk the most. The one thing is when you saw the field, It wasn't exactly world beaters. There's not a horse probably in this field who I would even expect potentially. I mean, unless some things shake out, there's not a horse I think of as a Derby horse outside of Tapit Trice. There's ones that could make it, obviously, and they'll get enough points, but they're not ones that you think of and say, oh, I feel like that one has a shot even to hit the board. So, but Paul, this is your horse. You got the future play on him. Why don't you get into Tapit Trice a bit?
Well, Jim, how about getting 6 to 5 last time in a 6-horse field?
Yeah,
you want to talk about Christmas in Hallandale? I was there in person to celebrate Christmas in Hallandale,
and not even favored in that race. I mean, how about that too? That was the thing that was amazing. And Pete, one note that you make, and I think it's an important note to make. I don't think we've seen a whole lot of really top-notch Derby quality horses yet. I mean, Forte I thought was really impressive. I mean, Arabian Night earlier on you thought was impressive, but that horse still needs points. You look at these preps in the winners, nobody's been really a super horse yet. So that's the thing. I mean, it's kind of like there's Forte up here and then everybody else, at least right now, from what we've seen from the preps.
Yeah, it's funny. I was going to ask you about that when we brought you on, but we'll get to that later. I was going to see what sort of where you're leaning, but we'll talk about that towards the end of this race. But Paul, go ahead.
Well, I think the other thing, Jim and Pete, Todd Pletcher, as you guys know, is a very difficult read. He has the default poker face at all times. And I had he had come on, Howard and I were able to, we had him on for a visit earlier this year. And he was very good. I just got a hunch that he really, really likes this horse. And it's nothing he said. I did ask him in the paddock at Gulfstream because, he did have he had 2 in that race. He had Shesterkin, who did go off the favorite, Jim.
Yep.
And Tappa Trice. And I kind of made a joke and I said, kind of like having 2 kids. You got 2 kids, Todd. Could you pick between them? Do you like either one of them better? And his response was, well, down the line, I do. So I took that to mean I'm going to bet Tappa Trice today because I keep talking about Tappa Trice. So
down the line, meaning 30 seconds from now. Yes, that counts down the line. I guess.
I think he meant down the line.
No, I know, but I'm sure he probably meant it both ways.
But having said all of that, I mean, they're in a game of high stakes poker here. He has no Derby points. This is like the 4th choice right now in the future pool that's coming up tomorrow. And he has no points. So he either has to win this race and be in or finish second and then have to probably finish first or second again. It's not going to be the year. You're not getting in with 10 points this year, Brooklyn Strong. So, but I just think, it's the distance appears to be no issue. He's extending a little bit. Louis he sent him just enough from the rail last time, just to not get him in trouble. And boy, when he makes his move, he looks good. And I want to stop talking about him because I don't want to talk him into the loser's circle.
I mean, there's a little bit of there's not a ton of speed in this race, but I don't know if there's speed there doesn't seem to be a speed horse that'll get away and win. I don't know, Jim. Do you agree? I don't know if you went through the whole race yet, Jim, or not. So I don't know if you're.
There didn't look like a whole lot of pace in the race. So that's something that you have to take into regard. The other thing I think you have to take into regard too, the Tampa track this year has played a little bit differently than what we've seen in past years, where so many years that winning move was kind of that swooping 4 or 5 wide move off the rail into the top of the lane. This year, horses been able to hug the rail a little bit more along the inside and continue to run on. So if you can show speed, you're not having to drift out into the lane. You can kind of maintain that path and save that ground the whole way. And I don't know if it's something that they've done differently with track maintenance or something along those lines, but it has been a different racetrack this year. So something that you do kind of have to watch. It used to be only a certain horse could handle the track over at Tampa because it was almost like you were kind of running through quicksand. But it has changed this year. The complexion of the races have changed. I think this is a perfect spot. And I think you're right. The horse needs points. You want the easiest possible spot to get those points and then choose your path to the Derby. This is the spot to do it.
I mean, plus the speed horse you're chasing is probably going to be the 9 Shesterkin, who obviously we saw last time. Yeah, who you just saw last time, sort of demolished. So he doesn't seem like the kind of horse that's going to get away. Paul, were you going to say something?
I was going to say, I think there's a 98% chance that Shesterkin is going to lead this race.
Yeah, and I think so. Based on your top pick there, you're just looking, hey, put this horse on the lead, sort of run out, give Tappa Trice something to run at, and then hold on for second potentially, and then you get the double, that you get the exacta there with the 2 punches.
The TAPEX. Yes, the TAP. Exactly.
Why not?
The TAPEX. I like that. That actually works. It doesn't sound stupid. And then last,
and I'll tell you what, I need Tappa Trice, but my friend Bob LaPenta of Catholic Boy, I'm never upset when he wins, and
that's true.
They do like this horse. I think, and Howard and I talked about this, the fact that they're taking one more swing. They haven't given up the Derby ship on this horse just yet, because I think they're thinking, well, yeah, he got run over last time, but it's by one of our guys that we like a lot. So, maybe he runs second here. And
I actually didn't understand I didn't really understand the ride on Shesterkin. To me, that race was because I thought Shesterkin was going to win because I thought it was just going to go, and it was a little short for Tappa Trice, and maybe was going to get a nice second that would springboard him into the Derby preps. And then Shesterkin gets stuck chasing instead, and that's just not his game. And I think that sort of wore him out a bit. But I don't know if there's any more. The 2 horses I picked, just to mention them, I won't go into them. I have Classic Car Wash, who Penn State Scott, Classic Car Wash in the money. I'm with you. I agree. I have a stat here. Mark Cassie, 62% in the money, 8.5. This is a really weird one. 8.5 furlongs and up. So sort of, 16th, a mile and a 16th and up, over a mile. 3-year-old grade 3s on dirt. So that's as granular and stupid as you can get, but he hits the board. So if we can get a price underneath Tappa Trice, That's all I'm looking for. And then Groveland, I think, is just a horse, again, who just sort of runs his race and runs himself into the money. Lost to Litigate last time, but yeah, this was one I'm just looking for, like we've done in some of these other races. I'm just looking for underneath horses. Who's going to be the cold exacta, sort of like you mentioned, Jim. I don't know, Jim, if there anybody else you want to mention in this one, or
you know, if you can scroll back down to the outside, only because we talked about pace. Look at the horse in the 10 hole here. This is a horse that might at least be worth a look in Champion's Dream, and only for the reason that the start 2 back in the Pasco wasn't too bad while sprinting, and you see bumped at the break, 4-path trip, and then they missed, only beating the neck. The next start out in the Sam F. Davis, again, bumped early on when trying to go for the lead, may have gotten discouraged and backed out of it. But because you're looking at a large field here with very little early pace, this is the route to go. You get Antonio Gallardo in the saddle, who knows this Tampa track better than anybody else. You get a race where there isn't a whole lot of speed. This is his only choice, is to go from the outside. So if you want to look for a price that maybe can hang around, because the pace shouldn't be too quick up front early on. If Champion's Dream happens to clear and try to back things down through that opening half, it wouldn't surprise me if this horse gets brave and is at least in the mix when they turn into the lane.
No, I could say that for sure. Yeah, go ahead, Paul.
And speaking of that, Jim, I felt the same exact way about the 11 Zydeco last time. He was my reverse try-key play, and it looked pretty good until mid-stretch. I got to tell you,
I thought he was going to hold for a second. I thought he was going to hold at one point. I know you did.
I was trying to carry him to the wire, and so I like the thinking, Jim. I could see the doing that. You know, Pete and I talked off air, Jim. I think with this many horses coming out of the Sam Davis, you kind of either with that race or against it. Right. I'm kind of against it, even though I got a good run out of this 11 last time. That's why I went to the 9 second. But, you know, who knows? There are a bunch of them coming out of there. That race could turn out to be better than I think. I'm hoping it doesn't, because I'm hoping Tampa Trice wipes them all.
And probably will.
Let's go. We'll do our pick fives real quick, Paul, and then we'll get into. Then we can get into some Hawthorne racing instead. Let's get off this Tampa Bay Derby stuff. Let's get to the real track.
Points. Come on.
Yeah, let's get to the real track. All right. Let me bring up Paul's. I'll read it off first, and then you can sort of talk about it real quick. So Paul has leg 1, 1, 7, 9, 10. I forgot a comma there. With 2, 6, 8. With 3, 4, 6, 7. With 2, 3, 10, 11, and then singling Tapit Trice in the last leg, and that's a $96 ticket. Paul, why don't you give us a quick thought about what you were thinking?
Yeah, well, again, you know, I went at it from the thinking that Tapit Trice is very likely going to win, so let me get as much coverage as I can elsewhere, and, you know, hopefully Irad doesn't win them all at 7-5, and you know, so I do. You know, I did try to, you know, we talked about the Reds, who's 12-1. You know, he's one of the 3 I have in that race. Temple City Terror is a 6-1 morning line shot. You know, even Alpha Bell, the horse we talked about, Pete, that we liked in the Oaks, is 9-2 morning line. That 11 horse, that Leparoux horse, is 8-1. So, you know, if I were playing Caveman, which I likely won't be, my strategy would be try to get some prices early, and then hope like hell for the lowest paying pick 5.
Yes, I'm with you. Mine's not going to be too different. One little contrast at one of the races. Here's mine. I'll read it off. 1, 7, 10 in the first leg, with 2, 4, 7, with 3, 5, 6, with 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 10, 11, and then with Tapit Trice singled in the last leg. $94.50. Not too much different than what you were thinking, Paul. First leg, I'm really kind of hoping Worthington, if we can get that 9-2, because then we could get at least a little price on the front end. Second leg, I think you can go shorter. Skippy Longstocking maybe could be a single, and then you use some of the others as B's and C's if we were doing an ABC ticket. Third leg, yeah, we can get Temple City Terror home, because I know Chanticera is going to take money. We know Rougier is going to take money, but I like the 5 Gams Mission as well, if we can get a little bit of a price there. And then in the 10th, the Oaks, I'm just going hog wild. If free look is a guarantee win, though, when you're going and you're spreading whatever I am, 7 deep, the favorite always winds up winning that race. But I'm hoping that she comes back a little short and we can get one of the bombs, especially I have the 8. We didn't talk about Juniper's Moon at 20-1 morning line. Let's get that one home and then finish off with Tapit Trice to close it out. But I mean, it's a great sequence, all stakes. I don't know, Jim, did you look at the whole sequence? Did you? Nope. It's a fun sequence. I'm sure you'll take a look at it as the weekend comes. It's a great sequence to play. Yeah. So why not? So I think for us, we're looking at it as from a Tapit Trice perspective. This show is all Tapit Trice all the time. So that's what we're going to be rooting for. It seems like. All right, let's get over to why we have actually, Jim, before we get into the races, I'll give you a quick. Do you want to plug anything before we
I got a bunch
get into
of
the
questions.
Races? Yeah, fire away.
All right. First off, Paul, what's the story behind missing Wally Pipp?
Well, Howard's not on the show tonight. Of course, Wally Pipp was the guy who Lou Gehrig replaced. So, Howard could be in Wally Pipp land, Jim.
All right, so Howard's a teacher. We all know that. What class does he teach?
Math.
Okay, so this is perfect for him then being at the NHC. How does he explain this to his students? That he was off working on statistics homework? Is that kind of what he's going about?
Numbers, yes, numbers.
Numbers?
He could probably come back with a little worksheet or something. They're high school kids. He could come back with some math problems that involve horses or betting, or here's what a $2 wager does. So I'm sure he can. And maybe they don't know. So hopefully the school board and the principal aren't actually watching this show right now. So.
If he wins, Jim, if he wins, he might not come back.
Well, that's the next question. Have you guys looked? Because they do set odds on the players to win the NHC. Does Howard have odds set on him?
I haven't seen that. I didn't even know that.
Yes, you in Vegas, you can bet on players to win the NHC.
Oh, that's awesome.
We're good.
Somebody needs to send us some odds. Yeah, somebody.
We got to look that up later, Pete. Yeah, that's got to be good.
Find out what the odds are, because there's always odds, and it's one of the things we always follow it because Hawthorne's always sends a ton of people to the NHC each and every year. And it seems like we constantly have guys that are either on the final table or doing well. Jim Bennis, one of our guys, won it one year. So it's a good and bad thing. We want to see the Hawthorne guys do really good. We actually have 6 guys playing for $1 million bonus this year in the NHC also. Nice. So it should be a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah. I'd love to, it's kind of on my bucket list of goal, to qualify. It's a very different tournament. Howard has become a very good live money player. Matt Miller, our friend Matt Miller is one of your Chicago guys. Jim is in the elite live money player category. This is a bird of a different color here. $2 mythical win place races. Yeah. It's not so much betting strategy as it is you just got to find prices. There's 20.
Is that true, Ross? If that's true, oh yes, 500 to 1 would be about right.
There's 20 to 1 cap. There was a statistic online the other day, Jim, what I thought was interesting is, the percentage of maximum cap prices, horses who win, and how that affects the overall tournament. So, as people may or may not know, there'll be like 6 or 7 races that everyone has to play, and then another Jim, 7, 8, 9 optional. And those optionals are where you could really make hay, right? And it's tough to prepare for because they use 6 or 8 tracks, I think. Right. So that you might need that obscure horse from Hawthorne, Jim, who's going to be 15 to 1, right?
We had one today. We had a horse in a 6-horse field win at 32 to 1 today. So it can happen. And it's so weird. Like you mentioned, Matt Miller is an incredible tournament player. We watch him play the Hawthorne tournaments, which is a completely different setup. That's the live bankroll, any track you want, multi-race wagers are allowed. And I think there's players that are so tremendous at that a tournament like this actually takes away a little bit from their skills because it's just that win place type of wager, the caps and all that. I think it changes everything because if you really do your work and catch that huge price horse and you don't even get the max value for it, then somebody else can just back into some of those if they're just playing them all day long. And I think it evens things out a little bit, but maybe takes away from some of these really top-notch handicappers.
Yeah, it's a different style. It's like using a different part of your brain because the one is more money management and how to bet and what to bet on, as opposed to here, it is more sort of handicapping because you're looking for, okay, let me find that horse. Let me find a race where there's a vulnerable favorite where I think a long shot actually has a logical chance to win. Or in the required races, let me not throw out a favorite that probably is going to win. And I'll take the $6-8 because in the end, that could be X number of places. I mean, I've done that just in, horse tournaments where you're like, God, I wish I would have took that easy 4 to 5 shot and got that extra $6-7 or whatever it would have been, just to, instead of going for the long shot that probably wasn't going to win the race.
Right.
Certainly. In the mandatories, right? You can do that, right? If the horses, but
not a lot, but I mean, it's an obvious, and the optionals,
you got to have, I'm sure everyone has their own number, right? What's the lowest odds they would take on a horse and go from there.
Yep.
Yeah. And actually, Jim, real quick, we don't have to get into too many. You have Hawthorne has an NHC free online qualifier, doesn't it? I saw it in an email that I got the other day.
We have all sorts of stuff that goes on, and we do. We have an online qualifier that's going to take place throughout the course of the meet, where we're going to pick a couple of races on our card each and every day. You can jump in for free. It's just, again, it's kind of following that pattern of the NHC. It's just a mythical $2 across the board type of wager. And then you build that bankroll throughout the course of the meet. And then at the end, because the NHC has been such great partners, whoever wins this, and again, it is free, is going to get that seat for the NHC. So it's really cool. It keeps you kind of involved in everything going on with the Hawthorne races each and every day. We're trying to pump up this 12% takeout on the win play show, which is the lowest in the country. And you're starting to see that already pay off because it is more value, especially when you get that horse today that was 32 to 1. That price is going to pay a whole lot differently. So it's worth jumping into. Check it out on the website. But we have great tournaments. We do a lot of online stuff, and the NHC really has been really good partners too.
Yeah, and you can find that right on the website. I mean, go on there, and I think I got in. I don't know if it was the same one, but I think I got in one last year. I got in a little late, didn't do as well, but for free. All you got to do is remember to make the picks, and I think you get reminded.
They do. They'll send you a text reminder too. You're not going to miss out, so it's a good thing.
All right, well, let's jump in real quick. We'll jump into these races. We'll try and zip through them a little bit.
Yep.
All right, there we go. So we're going to start, and again, we're talking here about the late pick 3 on Sunday, which is March 12th at Hawthorne. First race, not exactly the stakes that we were talking about before. We're talking claiming 13.5 per 17 grand, 5 furlongs. We got the favorite here, the number 2 at 5-2, Fight On. So actually, I'll bring up our picks here in about 4 seconds. There we go.
All you USC Trojan fans out there.
Fight on, baby, fight on. So we'll start. Why don't we'll give you, since me and Paul have been blabbing for so long, we'll give you the start at each. You got the 1, Move On Over, who made me feel smart when I picked the 1 as well. So what do you like about this one at 6-1?
Yeah, a couple of things to talk about. This is only day 3 of the meet. Sunday will be. So all 3 of these races at 5/8 of a mile. But guys, today, our entire 8 race card was at 5/8. The track played very evenly. It wasn't just all horses making the top winning. You could actually come from well off the pace. It's a full 1/4 of a mile stretch, but it has played evenly. That helps a horse like Move On Over in here because this is a race where there is a lot of pace and there's a lot of horses that are just committed to the front end. Jam and Cameron has to go. Upbeat Melody has to go. Fight On probably rates close, and Jack Van Berg is a 1-run type of horse. So it's going to be quick. It's going to be contested up front. Move On Over should get a dream trip right along the inside, settle back early on, save that ground through the turn. You get a multi-time leading rider in Victor Santiago in the saddle for a multi-time leading trainer in Scott Becker as the trainer. And I think you're going to get close to this price. I set the line at Hawthorne. I think it's going to be right around here at 6-1 or so. And if that's the case, just sit back 4 or 5 lengths off, save that ground, and come running at him late.
Yeah, and I like a horse. Well, I won't get into too much more. I agree with everything you said. Obviously, the one thing I do like is you see a bad race last time out, and it was stretching out 1.70 miles. Now you're cutting back again, but maybe, like you said, I think you'll hold these odds because the better is see, this horse lost by 17 lengths, finished 7th last time. It muddies it up a little bit, but now you're getting a horse cutting back to, we talked about it a lot on the Tampa card. You're getting horses are doing what they're probably better off doing.
Well, and the thing about it too, and you're going to see a lot of these horses the first few weeks with those races on December 30th or December 31st. All that was finding any place to get one more start to close out the meet. This horse wanted a different race. That race didn't fill. They transferred over to this race and ended up running. It clearly wasn't where they wanted to be, going the mile 70 against the Allowance Company. This is a lot easier here.
And was there into a pretty decent pace. So it still was running. He was running his race. It just, faded a little bit at the end. We'll go to the 2, the favorite, Fight On. Paul, you have this horse on top. Jim, you have him in second. Paul, why don't you talk real quick, and then we'll let Jim jump in too and give his thoughts.
Well, I mean, how can you resist a horse who's won 1 out of 26 on fast dirt?
It's perfect, right?
And again, I'm a little bit of a fish out of water here, but it looked at least like on paper that maybe this distance might be okay for this horse. Brittany Van Berg obviously had a very good year last year, percentage-wise. The intermischiefs of the intermischiefs. Interesting, though, that the horse has run on everything. 2 wins on turf, 2 wins on wet dirt, 1 win on fast dirt. Probably a bad favorite if Jim's line is accurate, which we have every reason to believe it is. But I thought, if you were picking the top 3, I think right there in the mix. So that's
and the horse has to be in the mix. And really, the reason I made the horse the favorite was that start 2 back. It was 5/8, a race that came off the turf. A pretty good race against what was a quality bunch, actually, in that spot. That was the sole reason that I put that horse as the favorite. And Chicago's a weird circuit, guys. If the horse is trained by Larry Ravelli, Wayne Catalano, or Brittany Vandenberg, it's always going to take a ton of action, usually more action than maybe it even deserves. It doesn't mean they can't win. It means they're going to be overbet. And that's probably what you're going to see in this instance as well.
Yeah.
If you can see on the bottom too, the horse is working now. He got a 46 at 4 furlong, 46 work, 2 back, a 47 here. So it looks to be at least sharp coming in. So definitely a worthwhile favorite. Jim, you have the 7 public safety, 12-1 shots. We're looking at a nice price here. What do you like about this one? We'll sort of move on after this.
It's a combination of 2 things. One, just the fact that I think it's going to be a ton of pace that completely falls apart. And this is a horse that's going to settle back and then come running at him late. But the other thing, trainer Cody Rosine took a lot of his horses down to Oaklawn Park for the winter, and he's actually already starting to send them back up to Hawthorne because they didn't have a ton of success at Oaklawn. This is a horse that stayed at Hawthorne and has been able to get 3 works coming into this spot. So fitness is something you really don't have to worry about. Pace should set up nicely. That last start out of the meet was actually a pretty good race. And again, that was a race where, yes, it says condition 5 claimers. The winner of that spot, Nioman, is a horse that was very good against starter company throughout the course of its career and was actually just dropping down to get starter eligible once again. So public safety ran a really nice race there, and I do think that horse might be able to step up if the pace is right ahead of him.
I mean, and you're looking for, especially in a pick 3, you're looking for a price. They generally aren't going to pay huge numbers. The last one I had was Jamming Cameron. Paul has this one in third. I have in second. Again, this is just more of a speed play where sometimes I just like having the speed in a race. And if they hold, I'm not pissed because generally nothing pisses me off more than not having the speed. They run around the track and you just watch it and it blows up your horizontal ticket. So let's move on. We'll go to the 8th. The 8th race, we got allowance optional claiming 40 grand, purse 33, talking 3-year-olds and up with a ton of conditions we're not going to get into, 5 furlongs. And the favorite, number 1, Golden Hornet, who for Ravelli, who you just talked about. It's actually funny because I think I had that horse in this last race.
That was a good bunch at Oaklawn Park.
Yes, that was a good race. So I think I had Golden Hornet and didn't come through. So Paul has the one. Jim, you have the one actually singled in this one. Why don't you talk about it first?
Yeah, I'm not afraid to pick up a phone and call a trainer at any time. And I called Ravelli actually before that last start at Oaklawn Park.
Okay.
He said that he really did like the horse going into that race, but he was worried that race was going to be too tough. And he was actually worried about Osborne, the horse that finished second in that spot.
Looked great on paper,
Looked great on paper. The winner of that race actually got a dream setup off a fast pace and split horses and got through at the end. But Golden Hornet ran a respectable race, was actually pushed the whole way around there, dug into the lane, really didn't give way. The horse is just out finished late. That field was almost a stakes quality type of sprint field.
Yeah.
This field here is more like a $40,000 claiming type of field. It's a much easier bunch. You get the rail. The only other speed in this race to me that could try to challenge is the horse on the outside. That's the 8 Big Sport. It's a Vandenberg horse. It's a horse that they actually tried to retire after the last start of the meet last fall, and the horse didn't take to retirement. Didn't want to be turned out, wanted nothing to do with it. So they said, okay, we're going to come back. They gave the horse a start at Turfway Park where it ran okay, and they come back to Hawthorne. That was starter speed. That was a horse that in all these starter races that it ran over the course of the last year, nobody was going to challenge early on. Golden Hornet is a different type of speed. I don't think Big Sport can keep up, and I think Golden Hornet just wires him from the rail.
I'm with you. And actually, Paul, I don't know if you want to talk about the 8. You have the 8 or the 1. You could touch on either one.
Yeah, I just thought, my thinking was if the 1 isn't going to win, and I think the 1 will really be bet, Jim, especially, those Oaklawn lines. You look at the 2 races before the last race, $100,000 allowance races. People are going to say, wow, that's so. My feeling was if the 1 were going to get beat, I think the 8 would be the logical. And I guess the scenario I concocted in my tiny little brain was the 8 does go and the 1 maybe gets jammed up a little for whatever reason on the rail, doesn't get loose quite in time, and going 5 furlongs, the 8 steals it. So that was my thinking on using anyone other than the 1.
And actually, we had a mention in the chat. So Jim, I don't know if you want to talk about, we have from David here, who's actually just said he was going to try and get out to Hawthorne. WWW Hot Shot coming off the layoff. What do you think about this one? I had this one in 3rd, actually.
And why not? I mean, Emmanuel Giles won 2 races on today's card, and he rode the track very well. So something where you kind of have to look at for guys, especially there early in the meet. He's a bug rider coming off injury, but he has looked very good in the saddle. So that is a definite plus. This is another horse that could show a little bit of speed in here, but doesn't need the lead to win. So if Big Sport goes out there, maybe hooks up with Golden Hornet, this is a horse that's probably a length or 2 behind. Should be able to just kind of settle and run at him late. I was a little surprised actually from that last start when they tried the grass in that race back on November the 26th, because there were some other options for the horse in there. The Lightning Jet was a really good field, and the horse actually ran a respectable race. It's that start at FanDuel Racing 3-back that kind of flatters this one's chances. The horse ran a good race, almost got there in time, but Giles is a definite fit. The other thing I didn't like, just one drill coming into this race. That's the reason I kind of stayed away from the 3 Kozan's Valentine also. This horse had no listed works coming into the race, and that's where you were. So it's going to be a late added drill that's added out there, probably a 3/8 of a mile work into that first start out of the meet. That was my only concern with these, coming against a horse who we know is definitely fit in Golden Hornet.
Yeah, and I guess with the 4, my one concern was I never like to see when a horse is sort of hitting their peak under another trainer, and then whether it's a claim or a trainer move or a sale or whatever it is, and then you see a couple of suspect performances, regardless of the fact that there were excuses, I think, for both of them. Maybe it was a little outclassed here and then didn't really take to the turf, but you'd like to see sort of that similar form come back under a new trainer.
And Scott Becker at FanDuel Racing is kind of like Todd Pletcher at some of these other tracks too. I mean, he's heads and tails above a lot of other guys just for the stock of horses he has, for the ability to maybe drop a horse in and give it a shot if it does get claimed, because he's got so many other good ones. But yeah, that is a big move, and it's a change, which is probably leading to the reason why you saw those last couple of starts.
Yeah, makes sense. And I had the 3 Kozan, but I think the 1 is obviously the play. I had the 3, but we don't have to get into too much. It's just a horse I think has races that can win. Yeah, has races that can win. And I look for that a lot. Where do they have races on their form that I think could beat, especially when you're trying to beat who I think will be a pretty solid favorite. I think this one has some form.
Here's the thing too about Kozan's Valentine. Again, if you scroll down, you're not going to see any workouts. That's the one thing that was a little bit scary. You see what is it? 1 work at FanDuel Racing on the year, and that was a 3/8 of a mile drill. So that's all you have coming into the race. Here's the other thing, though, that is very important is the rider. Javier Tavares rode this horse in that start 2-back. Javier has not ridden the first couple of days at Hawthorne because he was finishing up a suspension from last year. So this is going to be the first day that he's back. He gets along very well with horses. He's a very smart rider, very good for timing for this track. and it's a hard track to ride because you have that long stretch and tight turns. He rides it very well, and he's not afraid to save ground and try to split horses. So he'll put this horse in the mix. If the horse is fit, I would say the horse could be right there. I'm going to pick Kozan's Valentine second in the race when I'm on air. But again, if I had a couple more works coming into this race, I'd probably give it a little bit more of a shot.
Makes sense. Yeah, and that last race was deceptive too. Like you said, reluctant to load, broke poorly, rushed up, was wide. It was just sort of weird, and I just didn't like anything that I mean, basically everything that could have gone wrong did, and still didn't run terrible. Didn't finish dead last or anything. So I think there's some talent there. All right, let's move to the last, and we'll see how we get paid on here, as PTF would say. We'll give them a little shout out there. Maiden special weight, 30,000, 5 furlongs. We have 9 horses going, and this is sort of a nice spread out field odds wise. We got the 9, 2 Royal with as the favorite, 3-1. So let's see. Looks like it's funny. We have 3, 6, 8, 9, 3, 6, 8. Yeah, we all have the 3, 3, 6, 8, 9. I threw in one extra horse just for fun for a price, since I thought this was getting a little chalky. But Jim, why don't you talk us through the 3, Dominique?
It was very surprising to me in that last start out of the year for Dominique, because again, you talk about these horses just trying to find spots to run in, and they wanted to get a race for this horse to close out the meet. The Illinois Maiden Allowance race didn't fill, so they ran against Open Company there. And not only did the horse have the 12 hole, but the horse went off as a 2-1 favorite. So the barn had to have been talking to somebody about it, because there was really nothing on paper that said, okay, we're seeing a bunch of bullets. Okay, this is a horse that's a superstar by any means. So much worked against the reasoning as to why this horse should have been the favorite. And then you see reluctant to load, 12 hole settles back, and then still didn't run a bad race, finished 4th in there. But now you're moving to Illinois Bred Company. You're coming in with some works leading into the spot, and they kind of just kept right after this horse. Gave a little bit of a breather after that race. Then 3 drills coming into this race. You get the 3 hole. Santiago gets back aboard. Everything you would figure would have to improve for Dominique in here. The only reason I didn't lay the horse as the favorite was because the rider change on the outside on 2 Royal. E.T. Baird, he's kind of like Ravelli and everybody else on the training end. He's on the jock end. When E.T. takes over on a horse for somebody else, the bettors just seem to jump on it, and that's the reason I laid this horse as the favorite.
Yeah, it's funny. I had a stat in here. Steve Manley, 39% win, 69% in the money with a jockey change to E.T. Baird. Yeah. So you're definitely making some money when you get that switch there. Yeah, do you want to talk? We all have this one in the mix. Sure. We all actually have it sort of in the 4th spot, but you want to just jump into this one at 3-1?
Well, here's the thing. This is the fastest horse in the race. If somebody's going to clear, this will be the horse that'll clear from the outside. E.T. is kind of like our modern day early fires here in Illinois. Early really run races one way. Get out of the gate, go, clear, and come and catch me. That's how E.T. rides horses too. And he's a veteran rider who's a very smart rider, but he just gives a little bit of that encouragement to get over and cross over. And at 5/8 of a mile against Maiden Company, if he goes over and just kind of clutters things up to his inside just a little bit as he's crossing over, it could cause chaos behind him. And he might just be able to get the jump and be 3 lengths clear before anybody knows it. But that is kind of his style. And when you're on the outside here with that short sprint, kind of like what we talked about in that Tampa race for the stake, from the outside, you have no choice but to go. And I think he is going to try to go and clear. And that could be the reason why this horse could be pretty tough.
Yeah, no, I agree. Now we have the 6 coming out of, we actually have it. If we had a little more time, we could show it, but we have the 6 Cantu. Paul, why don't you talk about this one real quick? Because you have the 6 in second. I have the 6 in second. Jim has the 6 in third, all coming out of that same race. We could at least show the chart here where we have Cantu sat off, 2 Royal, I should say, was on the lead. Cantu sat off. Dominique had that terrible trip and was closing late, and then sort of Cat Royale just sort of rolled by the field and was clearly, at least that day, was clearly the best. But Paul, what do you think? If you're picking from 3 in the same race, what did you like about this one?
Well, again, Jim talked about why, the logistics with that 3 and, running them in Open Company. Here's a horse that they started off in Open Company, and, as a maiden, took a shot in state-bred stakes races, which even though they're state-bred, shows some confidence putting them in stakes races, ran very respectably. Really, it looks like on paper the only bad race is the second race, and you could see by the lines had some real gate troubles. So, it looks to me like this is a horse that if she puts it all together, certainly could be good enough to win this. And, speed figure wise, let's face it, a 49 looms large in this race. So I just think the horse fits. I think the horse is logical on a bunch of fronts.
Well, and one other note to that, the winner of that race, Cat Royale, was actually a horse that was running against State Bred Stakes Company before breaking its maiden two and was really well regarded in those races. Actually went off as the favorite on debut in a stake race. So you're looking at a field where kind of things, just the way they unfolded there, Cantu, I think that race is flattered a little bit more even than the speed figure.
And Cantu I had it in the note that Cantu made a winning move.
Yeah.
And we talk about that where the horse makes the move and then just gets beat by another horse. But if that horse isn't there, then you're making a winning move there. One more, just Jim, before we go, because it's harder for people to gauge first-time starters. We all have the 8 Wildwood Triple. I think I just sort of there was some sire side was 25% 3-year-old first-time starters. The dam side had only one starter who ran second, but was a good horse generally early beyond that. So to me, I was like, in a field that's not obviously world beaters, sometimes you like taking the new shooter. What am I missing there? Anything?
Here's the only thing you're missing. And again, it's a Chicago betting angle. Victor Santiago typically rides first call for Scott Becker. Chris Amy kind of picks up that second horse, and Becker puts 2 in a lot of races. So if Victor Santiago is thinking enough that he has to stay with Dominique in here, it's because he thinks that horse is the winner. And that's the only reason why this is a horse that I still had underneath, but didn't put on top, because the works are good. Becker is usually speed first out. Lasix here for the first time. What you do have to watch for this horse, and this is one of the hard things here, is because it's the end of a pick 3 wager, you don't really get to see. But if you're wagering on this race on its own, see how this horse behaves in the paddock. Some of the Becker horses in the underground paddock at Hawthorne don't handle it very well. They're very washy in that first start out, and they kind of take a little bit of time to adjust. So if you're playing separately for just the finale, that's what you might want to watch with Wildwood Triple. If everything goes all right with this horse walking into the paddock and behaving, getting saddled, maybe it's worth the horse to throw in your gimmicks as well.
Excellent. Yeah. And I mean, and if you can get a price on a little bit of a price, and you can beat the couple of favorites on that back end of the pick 3, or like you said, just if you're betting it to win, that's always a good shot. Last one, I'll just get your take on the 2 horse here, Jim. This was a weird one because I thought the last one actually just sort of showed speed. It was a little bit of a pace. And the horses who came out, I think, that were next out, first and second, mid-50 buyers, which would probably beat this field. This was one I was like, can I find a price just to put in the mix, and a horse that maybe improved? I the first one was an awkward break. I don't know what went wrong in the first one, but maybe coming back showed a little bit more signs, and now maybe at a price you can get a horse that's a little bit on the upward swing.
If Two Royal doesn't make the lead from the outside, this is the other horse that is going to make the top. So you're definitely on the right thing there. Felix sticks with the horse. It's a horse that, and again, you just have to kind of watch some of these tendencies. Jim Watkins is a trainer that is stable down at FanDuel Racing. This is a horse that he left behind at Hawthorne throughout the course of the winter to continue training. So FanDuel Racing, things are kind of spotty for being able to get out there on the racetrack throughout the course of the winter, whereas for us, everything's consistent 6-day-a-week training. So you have regular works coming into this race. The horse is fit. The horse will be showing speed. If for some reason Two Royal on the outside doesn't clear, you can definitely make a case for this horse at a price.
Yeah, and that's what I was sort of going with. I did like the last work, and if you can get speed, and you're cutting back a little bit, first time going 5, so maybe the cut back with the speed. All right, let's go into, so we'll put us back on, and then we'll go into our pick 5s real quick, and then we'll wrap this thing up. So first we'll go with Jim for
3, 5. Don't worry about it, Paul.
Pick 3.
Oh, did I say pick 5? Oh, you know me, Paul. I always got pick 5s on the brain. I'm not a pick 3 guy, so I'm more of a pick 5er. So that's a bad Freudian slip there. All right, let's show Jim's real quick. I'll read it out, and then you can give us a quick thought about it. We have 1, 2, 7 with 1. With 3, 6, 8, 9, and that's a nice cheap $6 ticket that you could bang for as many times as you want if you don't like that
Yeah, and that's the way I would play it. What I would do is, because I believe Golden Hornet is the winner, and I don't think you have to spread a ton on either side, I'd probably play this 5 times worth. Put it in for $30, get 5 times your return on there. And again, you just catch a couple of prices. Maybe that Cody Rosine horse wins that first leg. Nobody should be a real heavy favorite in that last leg. So if you can catch a little bit of value in the first leg and hit it 5 times, it's definitely worth it.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. That sounds about right. And I think I know Paul and I are used to doing a little bit more caveman-y. This probably wouldn't be the way. I assume, Paul, will go into your ticket. You have 2, 3, 8 with 1, 8 with 3, 6, 8, 9, and that's a $24 ticket. I assume
for $1, that's
you did your
$12 ticket.
$12 ticket. Yes. You were playing for $1 though.
I'm used to playing New York, where they will not let me play 50-cent victories, even if I wanted to, which I probably don't. But it would be a 12. And the only difference with Jim's ticket, it's not efficient, but to go equal with Golden
Hornet, and Big Sport.
I almost said Golden Pal. Golden
that would
Hornet,
be a single at Hawthorne, I think. I think we would single him.
But again, so I would probably do the same, even at $12. Probably play it a couple of times and kind of hope that the 8 does win that second race.
Yeah,
and I agree with David Barista, by the way.
Yeah,
let's go.
That sounds good. Next time, let's bring those. So here, I went the exact terrible way. This is not exactly how I would play it, but I have a $30.50. So I went 1, 2, 3 in the first leg with 1, 3, 4, 8. With 2, 3, 6, 8, 9. Again, what I would probably do is maybe play 2 tickets, one with probably Golden Hornet and that second leg singled, and then maybe try and get a price in one of the other legs. And that's why I had that 2 in leg 3, just figuring, hey, if we can get a 1 double digit in the pick 3, we can get paid a little bit. But yeah, again, I'm not a huge pick 3 player, so I was like, I'm going a little thick here, but it's probably not the smartest way. But that's why we have Jim on for actually the brains and the operation.
Well, so and if you're going to play those and you want to spread one race earlier for the pick 4, again, it's just a 15% takeout for the late pick 4. We do early pick 4 and late pick 4, so maybe look at some horses in the 6 and kind of pair up with that. And again, it's a 50-cent base minimum, so it won't cost you a whole lot.
Yes, for sure. So I guess before we go, Jim, anything else while we have you on? Anything else you want to plug? Oh, did you want to talk? You mentioned NHC charity.
Oh, yeah, the charity challenge.
Yes.
Yeah, so I've participated in the charity challenge in recent years. I actually finished in the top 10 last year. It is a pick and pray type of challenge, so I will take those shots at prices. I'm going to be somewhere 8, 10, 12 to 1 probably with every single selection. The cool thing about it, and Howard would actually love this being a teacher, but the charity I play for is a charity called Bernie's Book Bank. It's a charity that for every dollar you donate, it puts books in the hands of students in the Chicagoland area that are underprivileged. I've been able to go out there. I do marathon charity walks for them every year. We do a 26-mile walk. We go out there, go to these schools, put books in these kids' hands. It's so cool to see for these kids who you're handing them a bag with 6 to 12 books. And they're like, these are mine. You're like, yeah, you get to keep those. It is. It's really cool. It's really rewarding. So I'm hoping to have a good run in the charity challenge, because if I do, that means it's $2,500 to Bernie's Book Bank, and that means it's going to be a lot of books in the hands of kids in the Chicagoland area.
That's fantastic. Sounds like a fantastic cause, and we wish you the best of luck for yourself and for the kids. Obviously, that's anything. Paul, you want to wrap us up with anything? Any last second comments?
Well, we want to wish our friends Howard, and if Kyle did manage to get in, good luck out in Vegas, and Matt Miller and Nick Tamro. There's a lot of HHH alumni guests out there. Nick Tamro is out there, and we've had Nick on, of course, and little envious. It would be nice to be in that room, as we said when you showed the photo. But we wish them well, and hope that Uncle Howard comes back $750,000 richer. If that's
at 500 to 1.
At 500 to 1,
yeah.
Too. Maybe there'll be a little extra money in our kitty too,
exactly.
Paul. Maybe we'll be able to play $125 pick 5s if he wins $750,000. Wouldn't that be lovely?
That'd be great.
Here we got one night. We'll finish off. Vale was the first one in. We'll give him the last comment out. Thank you, Vale. We appreciate that. So we'll sign off now. I think we've gone an hour and 45, a nice lengthy one today, but who cares? It's pre-NHC. And hopefully maybe one thing we could talk about is we can get some of these guys on a show together, some of these guys and gals who are fans who are in the contest, and maybe we get them on and sort of share some experiences that they had. I think that would be a really fun thing for our listeners. So to sign off, for myself, Pete Visco, for Paul Halloran, and for Jim Miller from Hawthorne Racecourse, thank you. Good luck, everybody. Let's cash some tickets at whatever track you're playing next. Take care.
Thanks, Jim.
Thanks, guys.
If you have not followed his Triple H horse racing podcast, you're missing out. It's one of the best podcasts in the country.